I'm so sorry. Sorry, Tony. Okay. On the street. 1, 2, 3. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of True Crime and Cocktails. We're so glad that you're here. As always, I am your host, Lauren Ash. And as always, I am joined by my co-hostess with the mostess, Christy Oxborrow. How you feeling?
Oh, I did tell you there'd be a difference in emotion from last week to this week. You did. And you did ask what it's like to leave a human child and walk away from them.
Yeah.
Tight pressure in your chest 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not great. It's not great.
Yeah, it feels like a big change.
Yeah. Feels like that moment where you constantly think you've forgotten something.
Sure.
So you're in that constant state of like, oh shit, where did I put that? Oh, I don't know. What am I forgetting? Your child. You've forgotten your child. That's what it is.
Yeah.
He is in communication with us, so we know he's fine, but am I? I don't know. I literally had a package arrive at my doorstep yesterday. And the Purelator man, bless him, I looked at him and I went, oh, wasn't expecting anything today. He's like, isn't this the fun thing? I come and see you and I surprise you and you never know what you're getting until you look at who it's from. And then I looked at it and I went, I ordered this when I was sad. So yeah, he gets it. He sees all sides of me. He understands.
I like that you have a real connection with your courier, your Purelator man.
Oh yeah, he's here often. He's here often. But yeah, I mean, he's a lovely gentleman. It's nicer, and I'm gonna say this. Sometimes he has to ring. Sometimes, well, he always rings the doorbell if he leaves something, but sometimes he has to stay there because he needs me to sign for it. Other times, puts it on the step and goes, if I get to the door, whatever, we do a wave, whatever. But the new courier company that is mostly Amazon, sometimes they do some other stuff, but that Intelcom, it's like a random courier. Fine.
Okay.
Great. Have stuff arrive faster than I expect. Great. But now they want you to rate the courier. So they'll leave the stuff on your step, ring the doorbell to let you know it's there, and then they stand there and wait for you.
No.
And all they want is to tell you, give me a 5-star rating so that I can.
No, this is my own. So now that's my personal hell.
Yep. Now it's become, we wait. We play the long game and we wait until they've gone. And they'll like walk down down the sidewalk and then just stand there and wait. So I'm standing there waiting for them to go so I can open the door. And it's like, I've a couple of times gone to like click the link because it's like, the package was arrived, go give them a star rating, but then it doesn't work. And so I'm like, okay, well, it's fine. But I'm just like, I can't do this.
No.
Don't pressure me about giving you ratings. Especially when you walk up to my house, literally just drop everything on my doorstep and walk.
Yeah.
You think that's first? Because you drove it? And then
I'll tell you this.
Punted it onto my front step.
I'll tell you this, what is 5 stars though, is I was texting with my exterminator today. Not something I thought I'd ever say before. But I'm currently in the beautiful city of Toronto, Ontario, Canada, working on a secret music project. I'm going to start teasing that.
I like that.
So yeah, I was texting my exterminator and he was like, so Lauren, ... And then there isn't an immediate. And I waited and I waited and I waited. And then I went, yes, ? I'm going to pull this up to show you. So he was like, hey, you remember the last time that I came and you saw a wasp's nest? And I was like, yeah. Now the wasp's nest that I saw that time was about the size of a quarter. It was very small. And he took it down. He did the whole thing, whatever. Well, look what he found today.
Oh my God, is that like honeycomb?
It's a wasp's nest.
So it is wasps as opposed
Yeah.
to bees. That's
It's not bees. Yeah. This thing for those listening is bigger than the palm of a man's hand. I'm like, how did that just happen in a month? Or I guess maybe 2 months. I can't remember how often he comes. I guess maybe it's every 2 to 3 months. But anyway, point being is he was like, hey, if you don't mind, could I get a 10-star rating? And I said, yes. Yes, you took down a wasp's nest with your hands. Yes. That's not throwing boxes at your front door.
Yes, correct. I also love that it's 10 stars. That seems like a lot of stars.
Well, it's a rating system. Like, rate me 1 to 10.
Feels. But unsolicited advice.
Please.
I've heard.
Okay.
If you blow up like a paper bag, like a Starbucks bag or any sort of like brown paper lunch bag, and hang it somewhere outside, wasps are so territorial. If they see that, they'll go, shit, my bad. And they'll go somewhere else. I have heard. Yes.
I got to do something, because let me tell you something. The fauna, and by that I mean insects, outside of my house has gotten wild this year. I don't know what's up back there. When you go out at night, there is so many crickets. And look, I actually personally don't mind crickets and grasshoppers. They've never weirded me out. It's just the sheer volume of them, because I've never seen them back there in the 5 years I've lived in the home. And now it's almost like the ground is moving. There's so many. The wasps are out of control. There's so many. And the other is spiders, a lot of spiders. And I'm like, what is happening? I don't know whether it's because there's been so much rain and moisture. I'm sure it probably is. But it's wild. It's wild. Literally.
I mean, I love that I said a Starbucks bag or like a paper, like a lunch bag or something. But now I'm like, even a McDonald's bag. I'd love to see that for you.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. Get out of here, wasps.
I've also seen some TikToks where they claim it works. And they've shown,
I'll try anything.
They hang it up there and they think it looked to them, because maybe they're fucking blind. Who knows? To them, they look at it and they're like, oh, it's another nest. Leave them alone.
And to be clear, I don't have any problem with the bees. The bees, no problem.
It's no problem. It's because wasps are fuckers.
And they get into stuff. And then it's,
sure.
Yeah, I can't, I can't take any more scares. I can't take any more things going wrong with the house this year. I've had my fill, and like some sort of like they've gotten into the walls or whatever it is. Like, I don't think I'd survive it at this point. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, bees are like, I just want to smell the pretty flowers.
Yep.
Let me smell the pretty flowers. And wasps are like, hey, sweet thing. Like the gross, like some sort of gross guy that you're terrified of because you're trying to walk somewhere alone at night.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Bees are going to give you money and put you in an Uber. Wasps are going to make you want to put your keys between your fingers like Wolverine.
Just like that. You're speaking in podcast promos, which I love. That was amazing.
I think at some point in my life, I'm like, do yourself a favor and just a 20-second rant about something that I can go, and cut that.
Yeah.
That would be great.
I like that for you.
Great.
Well, listen, the other thing, I gotta plug a show.
Yeah.
There's gonna be a live event in Highland Park, Illinois. Loud Pizza Records. I'm gonna be doing an in-store acoustic set.
Hey.
And signing a meet and greet situation. This is September 23rd of this month. Obviously, we're in September. Boy, oh boy, oh. September 23rd, 2 p.m., Highland Park, Illinois. Come on out. I'm very excited. I'm going to be playing acoustic songs, obviously, just me and the guitar. Gal and a guitar. Is there anything better?
That.
Anything better? Some covers, some originals, some new stuff. It's going to be great.
It's exciting. I mean, I can't breathe when I think about it being September already, but I think that's exciting.
September 1st.
Fucking September already.
The run out of this year for me is built to kill. Like, it's going to be wild.
Booked
up. And I know what people are thinking. The unions are on strike. What are you talking about? Just stand by. Wait and see, lovelies.
Also,
I just sounded like one of those wasps.
She says she's busy. She's busy.
Yeah.
Push her.
Arguably busier than ever. I don't know how that happened. But anyway, listen, that's what happens when you decide, hey, maybe a music career. Anyway, it's fine. I've already said too much.
For you.
Stay tuned. Stay tuned. There's things coming. Couldn't be more excited. I'm really trying to play it cool right now.
It's coming off frostbitten. I don't even.
Just know inside I'm going,
of course. Of course. Well, I love that for you.
Right? Yes. What you drinking over there?
Oh, I'm doing a Mike's Hard Lime.
Oh, I gotta go out and get. I'm in Canada. I gotta go get
You
some.
are. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Mainly because of today's. I don't want to get through it without booze.
Oh, sure.
Because I'm already fired up over it. So I'm like, just give her the booze.
I have a baby can of Diet Coke, which is rare for me.
That's adorable.
But I've got a little can, and one of the things I have in my fridge, I bought a variety of canned things the last time I was here that you can't get in the States. Canned Caesars, what have you.
Yes.
But the one thing I haven't tried yet, and maybe I'll get it, and I had it in my hand before we started, and then I thought, no, it's late. I have to get up tomorrow, whatever. So I went back and forth on it because the cans are just so big.
Oh, sure. Cider.
No, it is a Mike's Hard Peach Fizz.
Oh,
yeah. And I was like,
that's
that
exciting.
sounds nice.
On you, Mike's Hard.
They're branching out.
That's nice.
I may have to try it at the break. Because here's the other thing, if I can't finish it, you can't finish it. You can always get a new one tomorrow. I can toddle over to the liquor store and get a new one if need be.
Yes. And what we wouldn't give Mike's Hard, just, we already talk about your product enough. Send a few things our way.
Look, there's so many companies we've courted. We've courted many. We never get responses,
of course.
But I feel like Mike's Hard, that's especially here in Canada, that's a good Canadian product. So
again, there was some sort of like blackberry pear that I've been dying to try, but I've never found it anywhere.
Well, listen,
and by anywhere, I mean the one liquor store I go to. Maybe branch out.
It should be easy for you to find the product that you're looking for at a place that sells those products.
You're right. I mean, we had the main liquor store downtown. Got the shock of our lives. Went there, found out it closed.
No, the big one?
The one down the old train station. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, the Saskatchewan government is shutting down crown corporations. It's fine. That's not the point. The point is, they've allowed other places to sell alcohol, which has shut down the liquor store, which was really sad.
Well, what about the other liquor store? Is there still a liquor store open?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's like a huge one not that far away. And then there's, I think, a couple of different grocery stores have small, like, liquor stores within them. So you can still get alcohol here. It's just, those employees were being paid a decent wage. And now I'm sure the employees working the other one get minimum wage.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, what a sack of shit that is. Anyway, listen, we're going to dive into this episode because there is a lot to get through. This is one we get requested for a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of requests for this one as of recent. Yeah. Because there was a documentary that came out recently about this. We're talking about the Duggars. And if you don't know who the Duggars are, I'm going to walk you through a brief synopsis right now that's going to get us all up to speed. And let me tell you, this is a wild ride of a story.
Yeah.
Cannot wait to get into it. Jim Bob and Michelle Duggar became a household name when TLC aired a reality show based on their life with 19 children. The show was canceled after 15 seasons when an old scandal involving the oldest Duggar child came to light. Not only are we going to look into the Duggars' personal scandals, but we're also going to deep dive the sketchy church associated with the family and the scandal-riddled rich white men who use their power to abuse others. How many of these gross men are linked to in this episode? Spoiler alert, it's more than you think.
Wow. Yeah, I take some turns on this because I'm like, another man, another horrific man
Yep.
attached to this.
Yep.
Another man screwing people over. It's just there's more than you think there's gonna be.
Of course.
So, oh boy, yeah. At some points, this one will be a heavier episode than others, but of course, at the heaviest moments, we just hit it and run. Just
Hell yeah.
get in there, get out. No more than necessary. But for the overarching episode, disclaimer: this episode will contain mentions of sexual assault, child abuse, infant death, and child sexual abuse. So, trigger warning for those who need it. So, as most of you know, the Duggar family includes a lot of children. So, for the sake of making things less complicated, I am just going to stick with their first names. I usually mention the middle names and full birth dates of the people we talk about, but in this case, there are over 50 people. And so I felt like just the first names and partial birth date was more than enough. But I have a desperate need for praise that stems from my childhood. So I just need you all to know that while I'm not mentioning them in the episode, I do have their middle names and exact birth dates written in my notes.
Of course. I never doubted you.
I should let things go, but I don't. The point is, also with this many people, we're just gonna go with like the bare bones facts about them. We'll get into more details about specific family members later on, but we're just gonna go for like little bits because again, so many children. So, Jim Bob Duggar was born in July 1965, and Michelle, I want to say Rourke, was born in September 1966. Both lived in Arkansas. In the early 1980s, Jim Bob met Michelle when a mutual friend invited Michelle to their church. Michelle soon got a job at a yogurt shop that was owned by Jim Bob's mother, and soon Jim Bob and Michelle were courting. Because in their church, there isn't dating, which I guess may or may not involve things of a sexual nature. For couples who aren't married, there's only courting. It involves always having a chaperone with you at all times, sideways hugs, so you're not touching each other on the front. You just do a weird, like, side-by-side hug sort of a thing. And also waiting until marriage before you kiss for the first time. No judgment, to each their own. What works for some people doesn't necessarily work for others. I could never marry a man that I have never seen how he kisses.
Me neither.
But I mean, if they've never kissed anyone before either, I guess they're never going to know if it's really good or bad.
There's no frame of reference.
So,
yeah.
Not so bad. So, Jim Bob and Michelle were married in July 1984, and they went on to have 21 children. Now, sadly, 2 of the children did not survive birth, including a boy named Caleb, which is interesting that it wasn't a J name,
Right.
born around 1989, and a girl named Jubilee in 2011. So Jim Bob and Michelle said they never planned on having a large family, but after their first son, Michelle went on birth control for whatever reason, which they believe caused Michelle to miscarry during a second unexpected pregnancy. According to people with actual medical degrees, the pill did not likely cause that at all. But Michelle said she prayed for God to give her another baby, and soon she was pregnant with twins. And that is what the Duggars said they believe. That was their moment. They believed children were gifts from God and that they would just have as many children as God would allow them to have. And the son, Caleb, because I mean, for those who don't know, all of the Duggar children have a name that starts with a J. I don't know why. I assume it has something to do with Jim Bob.
Oh, I assumed Jesus.
Interesting.
Could be wrong.
Huh. I love that I just assumed it was a patriarchal, like, nod to Jim. And then one of the other kids named one of their children named all of his children starting with an M, so I assumed that was in relation to Michelle.
Oh, maybe. I assumed Mary. But you're probably right.
Shit.
You're probably
No,
right.
that makes more sense though to go like the religious route, but I
Yeah.
don't know. I just find it fascinating that they didn't plan on doing all the same letter, and then once they got that quote unquote gift from God with the twins, they were like, I guess we're sticking with the same letter.
Yeah.
I don't know. Either way. So the first Duggar child was Joshua, born in March 1988. In 2006, Josh started courting a girl named Anna Keller. They got engaged on Anna's 20th birthday in June 2008 and were married 3 months later. That is something that I find also wild is just how quick they go from the wedding or from the engagement to the wedding. It's wild to me, but it's why I have chosen to only mention when the kids were born and then how quickly they got married because
Yeah.
it's fascinating to me. So as of this record, Josh and Anna have 7 children. That includes Mackenzie, born in 2009, Michael in 2011, Marcus in 2013, Meredith in 2015, Mason in 2017, Mariella in 2019, and Madison in 2021. In January 1990, the Duggars had their first set of twins, Jana and John David. As of September 2023, Jana seems to be single by choice, and I say good for her for going against the tradition she was raised in. As long as she's happy, good for her.
Yep.
John David married Abby Burnett in November 2018 after a 5-month courtship. They had a daughter, Grace, in January 2020 and a son, Charlie, in September 2022. The fourth Duggar to arrive was Jill in May 1991. She married Derek Dillard in June 2014 after courting for 8 months. Jill and Derek have 3 children, including Israel in 2015, Samuel in 2017, and Frederick in 2022. The next Duggar is Jessa. Born in November 1992, she married Benjamin Seawald in November 2014 after courting for 15 months, which is quite a lengthy time. So good on them. They have 4 children, including Spurgeon in 2015, Henry in 2017, Ivy in 2019, and Fern in 2021. Ginger Duggar was born in December 1993. In November 2016, Ginger married Jeremy, Valau, after courting for less than 5 months. They have 2 daughters, including Felicity in 2018 and Evangeline in 2020. That was only the first 6 Duggar children. But my point is, at any point, literally at any point, there could be new children added, like especially grandchildren. So
Yeah.
these are the ones born as of this record. So who knows? Because I guarantee there's another one coming. I'm sure there is.
Oh, yeah.
There seems to always be. So Duggar number 7 is Joseph, born January 1995, after a courtship that lasted 6 months, which included a proposal at his sister's wedding.
No.
Joseph married Kendra Caldwell in September 2017. And look, I know some people do it, and maybe he asked his sister for permission first, but I just don't like people proposing at other people's weddings. Let the married couple have a single day that's entirely about them. That is just my personal preference. Joseph and Kendra have 3 children, including Garrett in 2018, Addison in 2019, and Brooklyn in 2021. Duggar number 8 is Josiah, born in August 1996. After a 6-month courtship, Josiah married Lauren Swanson in June 2018. They have a daughter, Bella, in 2019. Next, the Duggars welcomed Joy Anna, sometimes she just went by Joy, in October 1997. After a 7-month courtship, Joy married Austin Forsyth in May 2017. They currently have 3 children, including Gideon in 2018, Evelyn in 2020, and Gunnar in 2023. The second set of Duggar twins were born in December 1998. That is child 10 and 11, for those keeping track at home. Jedediah married Katie Nakatsu in April 2021 and didn't publicly announce the relationship until after the wedding took place, which was absolutely a Duggar first, and kudos to him for that. His twin Jedediah is the first one still. Jedediah and Katie have 2 children, Truett in 2022 and Nora in 2023. Jedediah's twin is Jeremiah, who married Hannah Wisman in March 2022 after courting for about a year. They welcomed a daughter, Brinley, in December 2022. The next Duggars include Jason, born in April 2000, James, born in July 2001, and Justin, born in November 2002. After a 6-month courtship, Justin married Claire Spivey in February 2021. The youngest of the group include Jackson, born in May 2004, Johanna, born in October 2005, Jennifer, born in August 2007, Jordan Grace, born in December 2008, and Josie, born in 2009, December, specifically 2009. I will also say, for someone who chose to go for all J names, as a woman, like, being raised throughout the 80s, I am shocked that it took her that long to use the name Jennifer.
What's wild to me is she did Ginger with a J.
Yeah.
Way before. Yeah. Also, I know they have a Jessa, no Jessica.
Oh, it's wild. I'm like,
no Julie.
Julia. Yeah. Oh my God. Like, they're just, yeah. Ginger with a J was an interesting.
It was a leap to
choice.
me.
It was like she heard the name and was like, it's perfect. And they're like, actually, it's spelled with a G. And she went, doesn't have to be.
Jacqueline, Jackie. I mean, again, there's just, I feel like, but yeah,
Oh,
I hear you.
Yeah. I also can't believe that Jason and Justin were so late in the game, too. Like, that's, I mean, again, no judgment. It's just very surprising that very, very popular and well-known, especially like to 70s and 80s kids, those names, it's surprising to me.
Yeah.
But I could absolutely never do all the same letter.
No.
I just don't think I could do that. It would stress me out too hard. I couldn't also do 10 children, let alone 19. But
yeah.
Oh God, I love that I've given myself this. So to clarify, Jim Bob and Michelle have 19 children, which includes Josh, Jana, John, Jill, Jessa, Ginger, Joseph, Josiah, Joy, Jedediah, Jeremiah, Jason, James, Justin, Jackson, Johanna, Jennifer, Jordan, and Josie. Wow. Oh, wowza. Not a single one of them would get called their actual name by me. I'd be like, yeah, I know who you are.
Yeah.
There is also a 20th child named Tyler, who is actually Michelle's great nephew. In 2016, when Tyler was 8, he went to live with the Duggars after his mother, Rachel, was convicted of breaking and entering at a tow truck business where she stole a pocket knife and $2 in change.
Oh,
Rachel was given 3 years probation, and in November 2016, Jim Bob and Michelle Duggar legally adopted Tyler. And for those who may be thinking 19 or 20 children is excessive, the Duggars certainly didn't feel that way, and that's largely because they belonged to a church that believed in order to be a faithful Christian, the members needed to, quote, open themselves to having as many children as God would give them. We will get into that church later on. But when questioned about their choice of having so many children, Michelle Duggar was very quick to say, quote, overpopulation is actually a myth. Yeah. Jim Bob then followed it with, quote, the whole world population could fit into the city limits of Jacksonville, Florida.
The whole world population?
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
Jacksonville is about 874 square miles, which is huge, but its population is around 971,000 people. There are over 8 billion people in the world. Imagine trying to fit more than 823 times the number of people currently in Jacksonville. The idea is ridiculous. Of course, this sort of logic is partial gaslighting because they're trying to make you think that a problem you've heard about isn't actually a problem. They also use incorrect facts, and I use that in quotations, to push back against the haters who say having that many children is a problem. It also has to do with the education system attached to their church and the inaccuracies in it, but we'll also get into that later on in the show. So with a family the size of the Duggars, it's not surprising they became very well known in their area. So much so that a few of them have tried to run for political office because of their fame. Jedediah ran for the Arkansas House of Representatives in 2019 when he was just 21 years old. He lost the election, and as of this record, seems to have no plans for future political runs, but never say never. Jim Bob was elected to the Arkansas House of Representatives in 1998 and even reelected in 2000. In 2002, Jim Bob made a run for the U.S. Senate, but was defeated during the primary election. Jim Bob then campaigned for a seat in the Arkansas State Senate, but he lost in a landslide. However, when photos of Jim Bob and his rather large family, which included 14 children at the time, were published in newspapers, it caught the eye of Parents magazine, who ran a story about the Duggars in 2003. This led to a 1-hour documentary by Discovery Health in September 2004 called 14 Kids and I'm Pregnant Again. And it turns out audiences loved seeing such a big family on screen. They were fascinated by how families with so many kids did just basic things like laundry and grocery shopping, like how laundry for them is every single day and like 10 loads a day, which makes me want to hyperventilate because for my family of 5, I do laundry twice a week because doing it once a week just felt like too much. And I'm doing maybe 2 or 3 loads per time. So the idea of doing 6 loads throughout the course of a week overwhelms me. 10 a day? No, thank you. Good night.
Yeah.
Not interested. Just not interested. So after seeing that first special and its incredible popularity, there ended up being 4 more Discovery Health specials between 2006 and 2008. It included Raising 15 Children, The Duggars, 16 Children and Moving In, On the Road with 16 Children, and Duggar's Big Family Album. The Moving In special followed the family as they moved from a 24 square foot fixer-upper into a custom-built 7,000 square foot home.
Did you say 24 square foot?
2,400.
2,400. Okay, great.
Yeah.
I was going to say 24 square feet. Feels illegal.
Well, that's like a closet.
Yeah.
Oh, God. But even though their new living area was roughly the same size as their first house, that massive 7,000 square foot place still only had 3 bedrooms. 1 for Jim, Bob, and Michelle, 1 for the boys, and 1 for the girls. And with I don't understand it either. They claim it was the children's choice. I'm just surprised they weren't like, even make it down to only 2 have to share a room. And then make slightly smaller bedrooms, or not tiny, but, smaller than what they currently have to fit 5-6 beds in there.
I feel like maybe I'm going to be crazy here. Like a 5 to 6 bedroom house feels appropriate when you have over 20 people in the house.
Yes. Oh, 100%. But I guess just consider this the beginning.
Yeah.
The beginning of the end of all
the
the times we're going to disagree with.
Yeah. The beginning of, and then it got weird. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And look, if that was comfortable and that's what worked for their family, good for them.
Sure.
Great. It's not a choice I would have made, but again, I would not have made the choice uh, for that many children. I mean, I went into my marriage going, I'd love 4 kids, 4. I felt like an even number 4 was nice. My husband went, "Oh, 2. How about 2?" And I went, nah." And so we agreed on 3, going 1 more he was comfortable with, 1 less than I wanted. Getting the 3rd one out, I went, "Doc, you tie everything up and shut it down in there. I can't do a 3rd. I can't do 4. I can't."
Shut it
Again.
down. Shut it
Yeah.
all down.
Yeah. He just wanted to see my
Oh,
insides.
yeah. Good callback.
Yeah. That was his wasp behavior. Anyhow, so So the fascination over the Duggars just kept growing, and the network TLC made Jim Bob an offer he couldn't refuse. And in September 2008, the show 17 Kids and Counting debuted. As additional children were born, the title of the show changed until it finally became 19 Kids and Counting. The Duggars helped put TLC on the map. And please know when I say that, I mean the Learning Channel, not the Fierce Lady R&B trio. The latter makes me laugh very hard at the thought of, you know who was chasing waterfalls? The Duggars. Like it just, the thought of the Duggars being the ones who put TLC. I've been cackling about that for days.
I like it.
I'm mentally unwell. So, with the success of 17 Kids and Counting, TLC started getting into more reality TV. Basically, the Duggars walked so TLC reality shows could run. Soon, TLC programming was full of shows like Little People Big World, Here Comes Honey Boo Boo, 90 Day Fiancé, Say Yes to the Dress, Toddlers and Tiaras, What Not to Wear, John and Kate Plus 8, Cake Boss, just to name a few. My personal favorite TLC shows, and thank you for asking, were Trading Spaces, Clean Sweep, and Sister Wives. Because yes, Sister Wives was a reality show that I got super into, but then stopped because Cody's arrogance drove me insane. I'm just realizing now that I forgot to mention it during the Chris Lee Knows Best episode where I was like, I don't really watch reality TV. I love the Sister Wives. I just couldn't get enough of it. And I couldn't have been happier the other day to tell my husband, because he hasn't seen me watch that show in years. And he's like, "Oh God, are they all still together?" And I went, "I'd actually love you to know only the new one is with him. The rest have all left." And
Yep.
I could not be happier for them.
Of course.
For them. He
Living
deserves
their
it all.
truth.
They are, and I couldn't be happier for them. So, at the beginning of the Duggars series, Jim Bob was providing for his family by tackling 3 jobs at once. He had a tow truck service, a used car dealership, and he worked at a convenience store. Jim Bob was then able to leave those jobs behind thanks to the money he earned from TLC. It was estimated his family was paid about $80,000 per episode, which averaged to about $850,000 per season. But according to some of the Duggars, or according to some of the Duggars' children, especially their daughter Jill, Jim Bob never actually paid any of his children to be on the show. When Jill was having her first child, TLC wanted to film the entire birth. Jill and her husband said no, setting up boundaries. Good for them. TLC then gave Jill a camera and told her, "Okay, fine, then you guys just film it yourselves for us." They had to include diary type videos and add in extra things while going through labor for days, which leave her the fuck alone. But
Yeah.
after Jill asked TLC to pay them to help with some of those hospital bill costs, TLC said, well, they've already paid Jim Bob, so Jill should take it up with him. And in the end, Jill did not get paid. Then in 2016, while Jill and her family were doing mission work in El Salvador, TLC pushed for Jill to return to the US to do a photo shoot for a 19 Kids and Counting spinoff. Jill refused. Jim Bob then sent Jill a copy of the contract he had her sign the day before her wedding, which stated that Jill was agreeing to film with TLC for the next 5 years. At the time of the particular signing, Jill was legally an adult. but for some reason she was listed in that contract as a minor so that Jim Bob could make the decisions for her on her behalf. Jill then asked to meet with TLC on her own, but they refused to meet with her. And what was the show that Jill was working on for TLC that she wasn't getting paid for? Well, in May 2015, TLC canceled 19 Kids and Counting after 15 seasons and 245 episodes. But months later, TLC decided to go with a spinoff called Jill and Jessa Counting On, which put all the focus on the two daughters, even though Jim Bob was still the only person getting paid to do the show.
Ugh.
Jim Bob did make claims he was going to give his children large lump sums for their time on the show. However, in order to get that money, they had to sign another contract, which would commit them to filming for even more years. So some of them chose not to sign. So if 19 Kids and Counting was such a big draw for TLC, then why would they cancel it? Well, it's because of the legal drama surrounding the family at the time. Now, before I get to the big one, I'm going to briefly mention the drama involving Jana, the oldest Duggar daughter. In September 2021, Jana was charged with endangering the welfare of a minor. While Jana was babysitting, she fell asleep, and 22-month-old Mariella got outside of the house and was spotted by a neighbor who phoned the police. Mariella was completely unharmed. Jana was given a written citation and had a follow-up visit from child welfare. Jana pleaded not guilty, but changed her plea to guilty 3 months later and was ordered to pay a fine of $880. Mariella is the daughter of Josh, the oldest Duggar child, and Anna. And Jana was likely babysitting at the time because Josh and Anna were probably in court, which segues nicely to the biggest legal issue facing the Duggars. In December 2006, the Duggars were set to appear on the Oprah Winfrey Show. But the appearance got canceled at the last minute when the show received an anonymous email claiming that Josh Duggar had forcibly touched at least 5 young girls. Between 2002 and 2003, the email claimed one of the victims was a family friend of the Duggars, and the other 4 were Josh's sisters.
Oof.
The show informed the police, and during an investigation, it was determined that Josh absolutely was a predator. He also would have been about 14 or 15 years old at the time of these incidents, which is still no excuse. So Jim Bob had this BFF since childhood named Jim Holt. Holt attended the same church as the Duggars and even had 11 children of his own. His oldest daughter, Kaylee, was born just days before Josh Duggar, so they basically grew up together. In his mid-teens, Josh asked Holt if he could court Kaylee with the intention that they would one day get married. Holt said yes. But in late March 2003, the Duggars told Holt that Josh had kind of gotten himself into a bit of trouble. More specifically, Josh touched some of his sisters inappropriately, and he had been doing so since he was 12 years old.
Oof.
Now, the Duggars say this predatory behavior started in 2002, but they also claim it started when Josh was 12. Josh would have been 12 in the year 2000. And if it started in the year 2000, that means the sisters who were victimized were between the ages of 3 and 10. When all of this was confessed to the Holts, Josh was 15. It had been going on for at least 3 years. Michelle, bold as ever, Michelle, outright, very bluntly told Holt and his wife their original plan was to not tell them anything. They were just going to have Josh confess it to Kaylee after they were married. Jim Bob then admitted they actually used Kaylee, kind of hoping that she would make Josh behave the correct way. Needless to say, the Holts pulled that whole consent for courting, and that relationship didn't work out.
Yeah.
And look, I don't I don't care how many children you have. You choose to have none? Cool. You choose to have a few? Cool. You choose to have 30. As long as each and every one of those children is being cared for and I'm also including their emotional needs, then cool. If you can handle it mentally and financially, great. Not my business. But when you continue to let a predator remain in your home and be around your daughters, I'm going to judge you. And when you try to use a 15-year-old girl to sweep the entire thing under the rug, I'm going to judge you again because it's all incredibly fucking gross.
Yep.
Jim Holt then pointed out that when Jim Bob was running for US Senate in 2002, Jim Bob's website, which listed his stance on very specific issues, stated that Jim Bob considered incest to be a heinous crime that should be treated as a capital crime. Jim Holt also pointed out that while Jim Bob was a state representative, Jim Bob signed a bill that would create a sex offender website to hold criminals responsible for the exact same behavior that Josh was doing. Jim Bob told Holt that he took Josh to the state trooper's office, where Josh confessed to what he had done. The trooper, whose name was Joseph Hutchins, let Josh go with a warning and said he'd really come down on him hard if he ever did it again, which just feels like a shitty way of handling the situation. Almost like how the state trooper was just letting Josh get away with it, probably because the state trooper was a friend of Jim Bob's at the time. So, how was Josh punished for being a predator? Well, Jim Bob sent him to a church facility for troubled boys in Little Rock, where he helped remodel houses. But he was brought home a couple months later because Jim Bob wanted all of his children home for his birthday. So, to be clear, no report was ever made and no real punishment was ever handed down, despite the fact that Josh admitted to predatory behavior for 3 years. Josh was also away when Parent Magazine did that whole article about the Duggars, that one that led to the TLC show in the first place. Jim Bob and Michelle told the magazine that Josh was away in Little Rock, which was true, working as a minister.
Oof.
Which was not true. But, whatever you got to say to get where you need to get, I guess. And just because we want further verification that State Trooper Joseph Hutchins is a full piece of shit for just brushing that under the rug, according to Joseph's very public Yahoo profile, his interests were listed as strangers with candy, preschools, and puberty.
I'm so sorry. His Yahoo dating profile?
Just his Yahoo account.
This is just out there.
Yeah.
Wowzer.
Investigators took a closer look at him and found multiple images of young children being sexually abused on Joseph's home computer. It was also discovered that between 2004 and 2005, Joseph Hutchins spent considerable time on his computer looking at pornography that involved children.
Oh.
In 2007, Hutchins pleaded guilty to 8 counts of possessing child pornography. He was sentenced to 5 years and given an early release in 2010. Hutchins was then arrested again about 2 months later, and his charges, it's shocking. Again, he was charged with possession of child pornography. It's like he didn't change.
Yeah.
He pleaded no contest to 10 counts of distributing, possessing, and viewing child pornography, and he was sentenced to 56 years in prison, and that is where he currently remains.
Good.
Hutchins claims that Jim Bob did not tell him the entire truth about Josh back in 2003. He said, quote, "I did what I thought was right, and obviously it wasn't. If I had to do it all over again, I would have told him immediately, I'm going to call the hotline and contact the trooper that worked those cases and have a full report made. I just thought I could handle it myself. No, your friend asked you to do you a favor.
Yeah.
Just say what it is. Just say what it is.
Oh, and I don't know whether he'd be a little more sympathetic considering he's a fucking creep too. Like, give me a break.
Oh, 100%.
I don't buy that for a second.
Nope. Heads up, spoiler alert. So many creeps in this episode.
Yep.
I'm gonna get really passionate
I can't
at
wait.
some point. So it is what it is. We're also not gonna forget the other victim in this entire situation, which is Josh's wife, Anna.
Ooh.
She married Josh in 2008 and potentially had no idea about the abuse allegations prior to the wedding. And when the allegations came out, Josh and Anna already had 3 children together, and Anna was about 7 months pregnant with their 4th child. It feels wildly unfair that the Duggars seem to have used Anna to try and hide Josh's past. It also makes me think back to when Josh first proposed to Anna on her 20th birthday in June 2008. Josh's sisters were asked about it, and one of them said, the wedding's probably going to happen super fast. And the person behind the camera said, like, oh, what makes you say that? And the sister said, quote, Josh doesn't like to wait. I think we can all correctly assume what his sister is referring to there, since their church only allowed courting couples to hold hands. They must also have adult chaperones with them during any dates or any time so that they're never alone. They can't have sex or even kiss until after the wedding. One thing I will add quickly is in that moment in that episode, the cameras just kept zooming in because they're allowed to hold hands. But the camera just kept zooming in, showing them holding hands, and Josh is just like digging into her hand and constantly moving. Like, it was uncomfortable to watch.
That's so creepy.
It's and so fucking gross. Especially even without knowing what we know about him, it was gross. And I'm like, that poor woman.
Yeah.
That poor woman. I just can't. Josh and Anna were married 3 months after that engagement. The disturbing detail, though, for me in this is the sister who said, "Oh, Josh doesn't like to wait," is one of the sisters that Josh molested. I will never stop being angry at the Duggars for making their daughters continue to share a home with their abuser, especially when years later, Jim Bob forced 2 of those daughters to do a spin-off show, and he was the only one to financially benefit from it. I didn't anticipate going into this episode so angry at these people, but I got there. I got there pretty quick. Mainly the parents, a lot of anger at Josh, mainly the parents and Josh.
Yep.
The rest are just, there's just so many victims that, oh God. So, despite the abuse happening back in the early 2000s, it wasn't made public until May 2015. And after the allegations came out, TLC immediately canceled 19 Kids and Counting. The final episode aired May 19th. And since Jim Bob had been comfortably taking about $850,000 a season, and I'll remind you, sometimes there's more than one season per year. So that's a lot of money. And yes, I understand he had a lot of people to provide for. So I still don't, I'm not giving him props for anything. But even with the allegations, Jim Bob was pretty eager to do kind of whatever was necessary to keep that cash flow going. But with the allegations against Josh, no one wanted to go near the Duggars. So Jim Bob tried to change the narrative around Josh, and he agreed to give an interview in June 2015 on the Kelly File, which is Megyn Kelly's news show on the Fox network. Jim Bob and Michelle admitted that yes, Josh did touch a few girls inappropriately, but it was only ever done over the girls' clothing and while they were asleep, so the victims didn't even know the abuse happened until they were told about it later.
If the tree falls in the forest,
Can anybody hear? Yeah. Yeah, it's also like that still doesn't make it okay.
Oh, and again, it's like if a tree falls in the forest, does it make a noise? Yes, that's science. Someone doesn't have to hear it in order for it to have made a noise.
Oh, Lauren, these people don't believe in science.
Excuse me. You're right.
To be clear, when I say these people, I'm specifically meaning Jim Bob and Michelle,
Of
and I
course.
will get so much worse about them by the end of this.
Oh,
I,
yeah.
I
Yep.
need everyone to know
Warranted. Warranted. Yep.
because some horrific things occurred in that home, and children were not protected, especially the female children, because preference was given to the male children, and I can't begin to tell you how much I'm going to get angry over that.
Yep.
But Jim Bob then made everything worse. During that interview, he made two of Josh's victims, Jill and Jessa, join the interview, where they were forced to downplay the entire thing and claim they had no idea it ever happened and they were sleeping at the time and they don't know why everyone's calling Josh like a pedophile and a rapist and he's such a good guy. And it was very clear they were reading what was, or they were saying what was told to them. And it was also very clear that that they were very traumatized by this and that their parents were just shoving them in front of a camera for the sake of trying to get that money back. To make those girls live with their abuser is unthinkable to me. But to then force them to relive the trauma by giving an interview in which they publicly claim it was blown out of proportion because they were asleep at the time is inexcusable. I, of course, am no expert, but every time the abuse gets mentioned, those girls are clearly traumatized. So yes, Josh Duggar is a predator, but Jim Bob and Michelle put their predator son's emotional well-being before their own daughters, and I will never forgive them for that. Those girls deserved better, and they still do.
Yep.
Then just weeks after the Duggars attempted to put a lid on the scandal, there was a massive data breach at Ashley Madison, a website that's basically a dating app for married people. So yeah, basically just an app to arrange affairs. Gross. But whoever hacked into the site threatened to release the names of the users if the site wasn't shut down immediately. To prove the threat was legit, the hacker released information about 2,500 Ashley Madison users. Then in August, more than 60 gigs of company data was released, which included the real names, addresses, and credit card information for users that the Ashley Madison company had previously claimed was erased. One of those leaked users was Josh Duggar. So he's a predator, cheater. Again, his wife really got the short end of the stick by ending up with that man.
Yeah.
Josh released a statement where he admitted to being unfaithful to his wife, claiming he'd been viewing pornography online and it led to an addiction which caused him to cheat. Because it's not ever going to be his fault.
Nope.
Then on August 26th, his parents claimed that Josh entered a treatment facility to receive counseling. And if that wasn't bad enough, just 1 month before Josh issued that apology, his wife Anna gave birth to their fourth child, Meredith. Yeah. And just when you think that no more twists were coming, a month later, so a very small time frame for all of this, adult film star Danica Dillon gave an interview in which she admitted to having 2 separate sexual encounters with Josh Duggar. Danica claims Josh offered to pay her $1,500 to have sex with him in a hotel room. She said that she agreed, but when she got there, he was very aggressive, and while it was originally consensual, she said it felt more like assault. Danica claims that Josh forced her to perform oral sex on him and that he was far rougher than they had ever agreed to. Afterward, Danica claims that Josh threw cash on the dresser and walked out. A month later, Josh apologized to her for that first encounter, and they did have sex a second time. In 2017, 4 of Josh's sisters, including Jill, Jessa, Ginger, and Joy, all filed a lawsuit against Arkansas officials who publicly released reports about Josh's predatory behavior. The lawsuit alleges that releasing the documents violated their privacy. The case was later dismissed because a judge claimed they had not proven their case. And once again, when you think the Josh Duggar drama is over, it just keeps getting worse.
Yep.
In November 2019, Homeland Security investigated Josh Duggar's workplace, Wholesale Motor Cars, after it was discovered that an IP address linked to the premises had been used to access photos of sexual abuse involving children as young as 3 or 4 months. One Homeland Security investigator described the images as, quote, in the top 5 of the worst that I've ever had to examine. The specific computer in question belonged to Josh Duggar.
God damn it.
It contained 1 video file and 65 images. In April 2021, Josh was arrested and charged with 1 count of receiving child sexual abuse material and 1 count of possessing child sexual abuse material. He pleaded not guilty. 6 days later, he was released and placed on house arrest. He was also only allowed to see his children if his wife was present, and he wasn't allowed to have contact with any other minor child, which did include his own sisters and siblings, I guess, overall. Josh's trial was initially scheduled to start July 6th, but it got pushed to November 30th. And while all this was going on, at the end of October, Jim Bob went, you know what? I'm going to run for Arkansas State Senate.
That's a wild choice.
Shockingly, he lost.
Yeah.
But what possessed him to think, you know what? Skeletons are out of my closet. I'll go for it. It's like, sir, stand down. It's I don't know if he did it thinking that would put the focus on him and take the focus off the fact that his son's a fucking creep. I don't know, but it was a wild, incorrect choice to make.
I think it might just be delusions, but anyway.
Oh yeah. Well, I did also write, read the room, Jim Bob.
It's not the time. I'll say that. Certainly not the time.
It's not the time. During the trial, Josh's past abuse of his sisters was brought up because, you know, that's relevant to this. Jim Bob was asked to testify. And you know what? Jim Bob got up there and said he didn't recall any abuse happening at all.
Oh, my God.
In December 2021, Josh was found guilty on both counts just 47 days after his wife Anna gave birth to their 7th child, Madison.
Oof.
Josh was sentenced to 151 months in prison, which is about 12 and a half years. He was also ordered to pay a fine of $10,000 and upon release would be on probation for 20 years. He was also required to attend a sex offender treatment program. In March 2023, Josh's sentence was extended by an additional 2 months. His current release date is now October 2nd, 2032. Josh currently resides in a federal corrections facility in Texas.
I knew this information or most of it, not all of it, but I knew a lot of it. And it doesn't matter how many times you hear it. It just feels, I mean, it's just so wild on so many levels. But anyway, listen, more to come. Let's take a quick break, grab a drink, hit the can, and we'll be right back with more about the train wreck known as the Duggars on this episode of True Crime and Cocktails. All right, clap 2 on 3. 1, 2, 3. Welcome back to this episode of True Crime and Cocktails. We're, of course, discussing the Duggars. Now, earlier on, I said, maybe I'll grab that Mike's Hard peach fuzz drink. And I want you to know I grabbed this on the break and I have to take a moment and just say, this is delicious. Now, these things are normally quite sweet. It is sweet. I'm not saying that, but for me, it's the perfect amount. It kind of tastes like fuzzy peaches in a can, which is, of course, my
Oh, you
favorite candy
love
of all
fuzzy
time.
peaches. Yes.
Anyway, highly recommend. Cheers.
That's exciting. Oh, I love that for you.
Yeah.
And I love that we've
it's
both
nice.
gone with the Mike's.
Again, to the Mike's Hard Company. What are you doing? You're sleeping on these two chuckleheads.
We do nothing but tell you how much we love you. And if I have to somehow cut this into a promo so that we can tag you and be like, Mike's Hard, people. Are they just Mike's? Are they Mike's Hard?
Well,
Doesn't matter. However we get our mics, we'd like it hard. No.
Well, we'll work on the
Maybe
messaging.
that's not the promo. Yeah. The point is, we talk about your product often.
This is delicious. Like, I'm not exaggerating. And again, like how about this? It exceeded my expectations.
I'm going to take this notepad that's right beside me and I'm going to write Mike's a peach.
Yeah.
And underline it a bunch of times and then, get in a car tomorrow and see where I end up.
I'd like you to try one. I honestly think you're really going to like this.
Oh, my dream is a variety pack with one of every flavor in it so I could just go for it.
You hear that, Mike's Hard? A variety pack. We've got ideas. We're willing to share them.
And I'm not saying 4 of 2 different flavors. I'm saying like, give me one of each.
How many flavors are there? A dozen? Give us a 12 pack.
There's a lot. Oh, that'd be nice. And for real, I'd heard there was a blackberry pear, Mike's. Is it a thing? Because it used to be, and like I'd scroll through Instagram and it would be an ad that would be like, look what we've brought out, but I never found it. And I just want to know. I'm going to go to the store tomorrow now.
Yep.
And see what I can find. And the next record, my hope is that I have a rainbow.
If I may.
Yeah.
Booyakasha. She said 4 sips, ladies and gentlemen, and dear people, it's going to be a wild second half.
Oh, well, and I'm going to yell even more and get a little more heated than I am. The point is, I came in here because this room is freezing wearing a hoodie. And so I thought, I'm going to wear the hoodie for the whole show. I'll just leave. I'll wear my pajama shirt underneath so that when we're done recording late into the night, I can just hoodie off and I'll already be half pajamaed and it'll be cozy warm because it's on my body. You can tell it's my pajamas because it's one of the earlier ones that was cut. And so it was ripped and I use it as, it looks like I'm wearing a white shirt underneath. No, I'm just really that pale. But I've had to remove it and just go shirt and just to handle it. I'm half pajamas now because Mike's got to be in the best way.
Yep.
For real though. Oh, and then the cool air just kicked in at my legs. I'm going to be too cold before you know it.
Look, give me 20 minutes and I'm going to be right there with you.
I love that.
Yep.
Sitting around having a couple of Mikes. You know what I meant.
Yep. Yep. Doing great.
Yeah, we're doing just fine. So, what have we learned so far in this episode? Well, we've learned that Josh Duggar is a fucking creep who doesn't deserve his wife. And I have a lot of strong feelings, specifically strong angry feelings towards Jim Bob and Michelle for what they've put their daughters through. But now is the time that we're going to get further into that church that the Duggars attend. I mentioned it very briefly earlier, but I felt it needed its own section of the show. And to be clear, no, I am not a religious person. I have nothing against anyone who is. Whatever your belief system is, you are well within your own right to believe it. When it involves harming another person, I'm gonna publicly shame you for it. That's where we're at. Also, to be clear, by talking about this church, I am not suggesting that every member is a bad person. I will specifically mention the ones who I believe are bad people. But just know I'm in no way lumping every member together into one negative pie. I don't know what a negative pie is, but I've typed it now, so I'm running with it. This is the kind of energy that I have brought while doing these notes. So, the Institute of Basic Life Principles, or IBLP for short, was founded in 1961 by an evangelical minister from Illinois named Bill Gothard. Gothard, whose father was head of the Gideon Association, aka the people who put Bibles in hotel rooms, he received a master's degree in Christian education. At first, Gothard started putting on workshops for local families, giving them advice on how to raise their children and how to have a successful marriage, even though Bill Gothard was neither married nor a father. It's amazing to me anyone would listen to him when he had no actual personal experience. But,
Yeah.
what do I know? In 1964, Gothard started calling these workshops the Basics Seminar. The whole point was to explain the biblical principles that he believed would help people create deeper relationships with family, friends, and God. The Basic Seminar is still currently available and is being advertised as a 24-hour course that is laid out in 19 videos. Gothard started taking the Basic Seminar around, and the hope was people would hear his teachings and they'd take what they learned and spread it at their own church, basically making his followers do the work for him. The basic belief was being pushed, or the basic belief being pushed was that to be a faithful Christian, the followers needed to open themselves up to having as many children as God would provide. Of course, the added bonus of these people having a large number of children meant that there were even more people out there spreading the word of the IBLP. Also taught at these seminars was the idea that men have complete authority over their wives and daughters, and this was the exact moment when I knew for sure this particular seminar was not for me.
No.
Gothard pushed the idea that there was this umbrella of protection and that it was basically the hierarchy of authority with God at the top, followed by husbands, and then women and children at the bottom. It was said that if you disobeyed your authority figure, bad things would happen to you. Gothard suggested that women needed to submit to their husbands, which breaks my heart for every girl that was raised with that mentality. Gothard also spoke about the hope to return to, quote, better times. And to that I say, times for who, Bill? You mean back when women couldn't vote and when people of color didn't have any rights at all? You mean back when white men were the only ones with any semblance of power? Grow the fuck up, Bill.
I love it.
Just like this, man.
Yeah, I get that.
So with this idea that men should be the ones in charge of everything, especially their families, it's no surprise that Jim Bob would take an interest in the IBLP, since Jim Bob has proven he values the well being of his sons over his daughters. I'll never let it go. Jim Bob first attended the basic seminar in 1988, and not surprisingly, eventually the Duggars became one of the biggest recruiting tools for the IBLP. The Duggars would show up at these seminars with their massive gaggle of children in tow. And from an outside perspective, the children seemed calm and obedient. Keeping in mind, I did not say those children seemed happy.
Yeah.
There was a clip in the Shiny Happy People documentary that I watched where the Duggars were on like the Today Show or some sort of morning show, and they were announcing that Michelle was pregnant. And every single one of those children was just like, oh dear God. Like there was not a single one that was like, yay. Like I assume the kids knew before that, but it was just, they were all like, Okay.
Yep.
Heaven help us. Like none of them, I just don't think these children were happy, and it just it breaks my heart. But the Duggars weren't the only well-known people associated with the IBLP. One prominent supporter of Gothard's was former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee, who describes the basic seminar as, quote, some of the best programs available for instilling character into the lives of people. Well, if that's true, I don't think Huckabee actually paid attention to what was being taught about character. In 1999, Huckabee pushed for the parole of Wayne Dumond, who was serving a life sentence for rape and murder. No reason why he pushed for him to be paroled, but on Huckabee's recommendation, Dumond was released, and a year later, he raped and murdered another woman. He was arrested the following year after committing a second rape and murder in June 2001. Dumond went to prison where he died in 2005, and maybe, just maybe, Huckabee shouldn't have pushed for the release of a sex offender whose criminal record went back more than 20 years. Because if Dumond had been left in prison, those two women likely would just, still be alive.
Of course.
And if Mike Huckabee really did attend a seminar about character, he certainly didn't pass it down to his own children, since Huckabee's 17-year-old son David killed a dog while working as a counselor at a Boy Scout camp in July 1998. David and his accomplice, Clayton Frady, were fired as counselors after that incident. I did not further look into information because I didn't want any. I have heard them use excuses since of like, oh, it was sickly. We put it out of its misery.
No,
not your job.
No.
You were a 17-year-old child.
Yep.
But of course, that's just them trying to save face. Again, for my own sake, and I think everyone listening, and especially yours, I chose not to look into details because it didn't matter.
No. What matters is that that is not only horrific on its own, but it's also a precursor to causing, to eventually doing other crimes, including murdering humans. So that's important.
Yep. That's why it was just this guy pushing character.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Another big supporter of the IBLP and one of their biggest donors is David Green, the CEO of Hobby Lobby. And if you don't know about David, just know he is surrounded by controversy. Like in 2012, when his company filed a lawsuit against the US government for the right to deny contraceptive coverage to his employees. In 2014, the Supreme Court ruled in their favor, saying the company was within their right to withhold insurance coverage from their employees. It is wild to me that someone who has the attitude of, I don't believe in birth control, therefore no one should use it, stop forcing women to have babies.
Yep.
If you don't want to use birth control, don't. But that doesn't mean you can deny someone else. Your opinions are not the only opinions. David.
Thank you.
You, David. Anyhow. Then in 2013, Hobby Lobby was called anti-Semitic after an employee in a New Jersey store was asked by a customer whether they sold decor for Jewish holidays. The employee said, Hobby Lobby does not cater to your people. Wow. Yeah. In 2017, Green was found guilty of smuggling more than 5,500 rare and stolen biblical artifacts from Iraq. They were shipped to the Hobby Lobby headquarters in boxes that were labeled ceramic tile samples.
Wow.
Which is something like straight out of National Treasure. Like, get the fuck out, David. But Green didn't let that stop him from opening a museum of the Bible, where he claimed to have fragments from the Dead Sea Scrolls. Those turned out to be forgeries.
Oh my God.
Fucking schmuck. Anyhow. And then I'm sure we all remember the pandemic that happened.
Familiar with it, yeah.
Green forced his stores to remain open, claiming that they were essential. He also refused to pay sick leave at that same time, which is crazy when you're forcing people to work during a global pandemic.
I can't.
And even after the stores were shut down by state officials, He reopened them, which was illegal. He then closed the stores and just laid thousands of people off. And while these men might not be the best people to have in your corner, it didn't seem to affect the IBLP, as more than 2.5 million people have attended that basic seminar, where Gothard also warned about the extreme dangers of music, TV, alcohol, dating, and public schools. They said that these things could brainwash your children into falling under Satan's spell. Just so you know out there, any kids interested in having a band, Satan's Spell. I like it. Give it a give it a thought as a I'm sure it's already a band name somewhere. But if public schooling is bad, then what's the alternative? Well, thankfully for IBLP members, Bill Gothard came up with a homeschooling program that he guaranteed would give children the equivalent of a high school diploma, a pre-law diploma, and a pre-med diploma.
Well, that's okay.
Yep.
Here we go. Now I'm getting angry.
Yep. Of course, none of that was true. I'm not even convinced the children who went through the entire program would end up with a complete high school education, let alone pre-anything degrees. The program was called Advanced Training Institute, or ATI for short, and it was launched in 1984 and described as biblically centered, parent-supervised, and home-based education. The program consisted of 54 wisdom booklets, which would allow children to learn to see life through God's perspective. Basically, the entire thing is based on the Sermon on the Mount, which I don't think I need to tell you doesn't exactly have a solid math or science base behind it.
Nope.
So how Gothard could sell this program as being equivalent to pre-law and pre-med is beyond me. One former ATI student described it, quote, "I am deeply sorrowful for anyone who only had this material as an education, because it is no such thing." So we're going to take a quick moment to look through some highlights from some of these wisdom booklets, because I found some online and I went through and just some favorite things that I saw that I went, interesting. Okay. Quote, "Hands are formed of non-living atoms." What? What does that even matter? It's not true, but why? I don't know. Yep. But how quickly a fetus becomes a living thing, I can't. Nope,
wow.
we're not going to go there. But then we've got, this is a quote from one of the booklets. "The body is composed of the same non-living chemicals that make up dust. It is only the breath of God that gives the body life. Without the breath of God, the body begins to decompose immediately and quickly returns to dust." There's the pre-med. There it is.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Because what I want when I see a doctor is one that believes that if I don't have the breath of God in me, then I'm just going to turn into a pile of sand on the floor, you know?
Yep. Here's another great one. This is a quote. "Rock music needs to be understood from a legal perspective. It can be proven to be directly associated with delinquent behavior by means of its origins and functions. The characteristic offbeat in today's rock music has been traced to satanic rituals in the jungles of West Africa. It was this type of drum beat which certain tribe members were specifically trained for in order to open the people to demonic control."
Oh, sure. Okay.
Just letting you know when you're looking to push your next single.
Oh yeah.
I got some
That's
tips
me.
from some wisdom booklets about
That's me.
it.
If only they knew how truly terrified I am of demons, and that's not a joke. So come on.
Here's another great quote. from the wisdom booklets. Fossils did not accumulate over millions of years. They were all formed simultaneously in one great flood. This was pointed out on 19 Kids and Counting, and Jim Bob Duggar said, and I quote, "Evolution is totally unscientific." And then Michelle Duggar came in with the assist and said, quote, "Science really backs up what scripture says."
You know what it is? And listen, I'll save it till the end for the most part, but I just have to say this right now. Here's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
If they wanted to say,
Yep,
science is bullshit, there's nothing to back it up, it's wrong. I believe that that is an incorrect statement. But
sure.
I can wrap my head around that logic more than trying to suggest that science backs up scripture and that evolution is non-scientific. Like, say I don't believe in evolution and therefore I don't believe in science.
Yep.
Again, I personally disagree, but I can understand it.
Sure.
This is where it's when you start to feel gaslit. You know what I mean? Where it's like, but wait, what?
Yep. My next line, this way of thinking hurts my brain.
Yeah, well, you said it much more succinctly than I did, but yes, exactly.
But we also can't get started on Michelle's very put on whisper voice that she uses when she speaks. I can't talk about it. Every word out of her mouth sounds like she's in a cult, and maybe in some ways she is.
I'd say so.
There we go. Continuing on with more from the wisdom booklets. Quote, "An attractive but immoral woman can use a wink to communicate lustful desires and sensual entrapments to the simple. Those who call to her whoredom are stripped of resources and vibrancy of life." Whoredom, ladies, gentlemen, and good people, another good band name.
That down.
Yeah. Yeah. Another quote, "Nakedness brings shame. Nakedness is a judgment for sin." Yep. Oh, and then there's like lists of like things you should and shouldn't do as a good person. One example, quote, "Do not allow boys to change diapers, especially for baby sisters."
It literally makes me want to.
Yep. Yep. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, there we go. There's another quote from a wisdom booklet. "When a husband gives a command to his family and the wife fails to work out the proper procedures to carry it out, many consequences may occur." Another quote, "When the wife does not fulfill her function in the family, she will feel inadequate and inferior." No, I think it's actually more like when the wife lives up to her like full potential, the man's going to feel inadequate because he has a small dick. That's where that's not it. This is just why I'm not a lawyer for many reasons, but
Well, never say never.
I just get my back up about it.
Never say never.
Yeah, you're right. You never know.
We're the law offices of Oxborrow and Ash, and we're here to call people you don't like
Yeah.
dicks.
Yeah, and we're going to do it during a three-way call, and one of us is going to be very quiet on the other end.
Hey, have you had someone wrong you? Christy will insult the size of their dick.
It's the only thing I can think of. It's like how anytime a man is trying to insult a woman, he either says she's ugly or she's a fat bitch or she's crazy.
Yeah.
Because they've got nothing else.
Yep.
So that's where we're at. Anyhow.
Love it.
Again, I'm just going to continue to get more heated. Oh, good. Another quote. "In a family without a father, the mother should explain to the children that God is their father, and she will clarify the commands he has given in his word by the laws which she makes." Mm-hmm. Because heaven forbid anyone ever just respect what a woman has to say.
Not gonna happen.
Well, it is what it is. Oh, good. Another quote. "All governmental authority is ordained by God." Not true.
Nope.
The proper picture of authority in any relationship is established when the authority comes from above, such as God to government, parent to child, husband to wife. Then there's a section that teaches the kids proper ways to dress and preferred haircuts. Quote, choose a hairstyle that complements the shape of your face. That, why is that necessary in school? It's not. It's all certainly not going to lead you to a pre-law or a pre-med degree.
No.
Oh, and then there's all the helpful tip. Quote, your hairstyle should be proportionate to your overall appearance and should communicate a message of obedience to the authorities in your life. The fact that I am not dropping this right now and running out and like shaving half my head and dyeing the other half bright blue or something is amazing. Like this, again, to the children that this was their only education, it's heartbreaking, and that's the moment that I will take 20 children into my home. It's like, I will bring you in, we'll get you into a good school that will teach you things. We'll get you there.
Oh yeah, but we have to deprogram them, and that's going to take so much time.
Someone an expert's going to have to do that.
We're Oxborrow and Ash. We will not deprogram your children, but we will show them a better life once properly accredited officials have done what they can to deprogram them.
Oh my God, yes. Oh, right. Again, back to that school assignment. My favorite was a section that showed 6 women in different outfits. And the purpose of the exercise was for children to circle the parts on the outfits that made them inappropriate to wear. I am going to post that photo on our socials, mostly at True Crime and Cocktails on Instagram and Facebook. It may end up on Twitter. Who knows? But you look at them and you go, what's wrong with them? There is something in their minds wrong with every single one of those pictures. Some of them, it's because it has lace on it, or there's a very small slit up the side of the skirt, or one where the woman is covered basically shoulders to ankles. But the problem with it, she's wearing a really not long necklace, and that draws attention away from her face and, makes eyes wander where they shouldn't. As the Shiny Happy People documentary points out, this is just them basically teaching children to slut shame women for their outfits.
Yeah.
And that is not pre-law or pre-med.
Well, and also to find something in anything. I think that's the other thing too, right? Where it's like, you can find, you have to assume that the woman or the girl has done something wrong in how they're dressed.
Yep. Oh, because it's always the woman's fault.
Of course.
Oh, I'm not done being angry about that yet. I'll tell you that much. Oh, right. There was also a moment where a question was posed in the book. How is light related to the understanding of history? The answer, quote, before Christ, Satan's program was to stop Christ from being born. He worked through rulers and nations to attempt to destroy the godly seed.
What?
Again, Bill Gothard promised these parents that this program was the equivalent to a high school diploma with a pre-law degree and a pre-med degree.
I don't even know anymore.
Yep. Oh, yeah. I would go insane. I would go insane. Yeah. Now, a lot of my issues with Bill Gothard and his teachings involve how women are treated. The constant pushing of the idea that a woman has no rights or freedoms and that she must blindly follow her father or her husband is so backwards. And honestly, I am immediately sad for any female who still believes that that bullshit is true. A pastor, a guy with actual proper religious requirement experience, that sort of thing, said that Bill Gothard, quote, turned every father into a cult leader and every home into an island. When it came to the women in the family, they had no say whatsoever. Once a boy decided he was interested in courting a girl, he approached her parents and asked their permission. It was basically an arranged marriage. The girl was not given an option to say no. She was expected to bend her thoughts and hopes around whatever the man chose, as opposed to choosing a man who fit the vision of who she saw herself with. The young couples were also never allowed to be alone together before their wedding, and I understand this was supposed to prevent them from giving in to temptation, but they were never even allowed to have a private conversation, which just feels like they were never able to truly be themselves in front of the person that they were going to marry. We can look at the relationship of Josh and Anna as an example. They met at a homeschool conference in 2006. Josh proposed 2008. Before the wedding, Jim Bob gave Josh a book that was called Before the Wedding Night, which apparently, according to people who've read it, talks just about the missionary position and then gives instructions to girls on how to give their husbands hand jobs.
Unbelievable. I can't. Like, I just can't.
Oh, but there's also a section that reminds women that they should be available to their men at all times, which is gross. The fact that it was more of an instructional thing for girls to learn how to pleasure their husbands is enraging because, of course, in the IBLP culture, it was all about the man's pleasure all the time. Fuck what the woman wants because she's not allowed to want anything. She's got this husband. What more could she possibly want? I can't. But the IBLP feared women having pleasure so much that girls weren't allowed to use tampons because they were seen as a form of pleasure. And to whichever man came up with that idea, I lovingly say, get bent. So that's where I'm at.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea of Jim Bob giving Josh that book, tape, whatever the fuck it was, about the wedding night is horrifying to think about because they filmed it for an episode of 19 Kids and Counting. The moment of Jim Bob giving his son these instructions for his wedding night, the entire moment, Josh just keeps saying, I already know. I know what to do. I get it. And it's like, really? How do you know what to do? You shouldn't know what to do. You certainly didn't learn it in fucking school. Oof.
Well, you know what's really interesting about that? Why
Yeah.
was that okay? Let's take out the fact that we know that at that point, Josh was an absolute predator,
Yes.
self-admittedly. Why would it be okay in this world for him to be like, oh, I know everything about sex? Now, I understand that the men have a different set of rules and all of the above, but my perception would be that if that's your child, your son, you would have to say, like, that's not okay. That would be my perception of what this world is. But again, I know that nothing makes sense. Up is down. Hamburgers are eating people. I get it.
Hamburgers are eating people.
The Simpsons joke, I believe.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, it didn't sit right with me in the moment. I get that. I feel like he was trying to play it off like it's cool, whatever. I know everything, but it's like that's still, it should not have been filmed. It should not have been put on
No,
TV.
more than anything. Yeah.
It should have, there's just a lot of things it shouldn't have been. But because I mean, as you pointed out, at that time, Josh had already been molesting multiple girls for several years. It just felt really inappropriate, especially given what Jim Bob already knew about his son.
Yeah.
At the wedding, Anna's father said his authority over Anna now transferred to Josh. During the ceremony, the pastor said to Anna, quote, "You're placing yourself under the leadership of Joshua, submitting to his authority, following his direction." keep in mind when you think of Josh going to prison for child pornography charges, people keep saying Anna shouldn't stay. She should go. She should run, especially while he's gone and during all these allegations. But to that, I say, where's she going to go? She was raised in this bullshit ATI program. She has no real education, certainly no sex education. She was raised to blindly follow her husband's lead. So even though she got stuck with a bad guy, she's trapped. She has no money and no education. And now she's left to care for 7 children on her own while her predator husband does the time he deserves. And when he's released, I bet they'll just go back to life as usual and probably have another baby or 2. I just wish that Anna knew she deserved better. And I wish by this point, even her parents would step in and go, you get out. Get out of this. This isn't for you. But the fact that they are just letting her live this, fuck them too.
Yep.
But it's difficult to understand when you were raised being told that the only way that you could ever really be free is to, quote, learn the wishes of your authority. Those are, of course, Gothard's words, not mine. The women were all raised to be meek and mild with that whisper quiet voice that Michelle Duggar has perfected. And yes, maybe I'm being too hard on Michelle for her voice, but I'll never stop being too hard on her for how she's allowed her daughters to be treated. So she's fair game as far as I'm concerned.
Hell yeah.
For my wrath, I mean. And speaking of which, when it comes to raising such a large family in the IBLP, some might ask, how on earth do parents manage it all? The answer is they don't. When it comes to actually raising the child, as in feeding, bathing, clothing, all around caring for the child, well, the men don't do shit. The mothers employ what's called the buddy system, which, according to Michelle Duggar, means that when the baby is born, the mother cares for that baby until it is weaned. And then the baby gets passed off to the oldest daughter for them to raise. Asking an older sibling to help a younger one with something is one thing. But to put the full responsibility of raising that child onto someone who is a legit child themselves is too much to put on a kid's plate. The Duggars said they implemented this buddy system when their oldest was about 8 years old. And not the oldest Duggar. We're talking the oldest Duggar female, because the males didn't have to help regarding the children. And don't even get me started on the idea as a whole. It's like when I went away for a weekend a few years ago and a relative said to me, oh, so your husband's babysitting? No, my husband is parenting. I really get my back up about the way society treats mothers compared to fathers, but we don't have time to get into that rant. Save that gem for another day. But when it comes to this bullshit buddy system, obviously some of the children have grown and left the house, but the buddy groups were apparently Jana was in charge of Jason, Jackson, and Josie. Jill was in charge of Joy, James, and Jennifer. Jessa was in charge of Jeremiah, Justin, and Jordan. And Ginger was in charge of Jedediah and Joanna. And keep in mind, some of these girls were only about 6 or 7 years old when they were first put in charge of their siblings' care, who were whenever they were weaned. So it could have been really any time from, like, I don't know, 8 months to a year and a half, maybe something like that. Again, I'm not talking about occasional babysitting or chores around the house. I'm talking about these 6 to 10-year-old girls spending most of their time caring for babies and toddlers. And we see what they're doing. They focus on raising these girls to care for children because all they want is for these girls to later become mothers themselves. I just feel like it deprives the older children of having an actual childhood, and it sets the terrible example that the fathers of these children don't have to do anything. And while you may think Their version of education and their patriarchal beliefs might be the only ways the IBLP is backwards. I unfortunately have to mention their forms of punishment.
Oh, yeah, this was rough.
Yeah, yeah. So, trigger warning. Some of this might be difficult to hear, but again, the most difficult stuff we're just gonna mention so we understand and then move on. So, Gothard brought in a fundamentalist preacher named Michael Pearl and his wife Debbie, who had a very disgusting idea as to how they believed children should be punished. Michael Pearl said, quote, "The rules for training an animal and a human are the same." So, we're already off to a bad start.
Yep.
Pearl believed in physical punishment and suggested that parents used a rod of some sort, like a switch or a piece of PVC pipe, and hit their child whenever they did something wrong. Quote from Pearl: "If he screams too hard with the first five and gets hysterical, wait. You know, a little psychological terror is sometimes more effective than the pain."
Oh, you know what? You're not wrong. Sometimes the psychological torture is worse than the pain.
Yep.
But that's neither here nor there.
100%. Pearl and his wife Debbie wrote a book called To Train Up a Child, which has unfortunately sold about 700,000 copies
Oh,
and is currently still available on various sites. So there are different petitions online to try and get those books removed, and I hope it works.
yeah.
In the book, the Pearls talk about breaking a child's will, reminding parents that they are bigger and tougher than children. Psychologist hat, if you need to be reminded that you are bigger than a child, you have things to work through before you should become a parent. Pearl also suggested that if a child happens to soil themselves, they should be punished by having to hose themselves off outside. And as further proof that Michael Pearl's teachings are wrong and incredibly dangerous, his advice to parents has been linked to the death of at least 3 children. 7-year-old Lydia Schatz died after her parents held her down for 9 hours and repeatedly spanked her with a quarter-inch plastic tube because she mispronounced a word while reading homework.
Mm-mm.
You heard me correctly. Her father was found guilty of second-degree murder and torture and will spend a minimum 22 years in prison. Her mother was found guilty of voluntary manslaughter and infliction of unlawful corporal punishment. She was sentenced to 13 years. Then we have 13-year-old Hannah Grace Rose Williams, who died of hypothermia after her adoptive parents forced Hannah to sleep in a barn and only gave her a single towel as clothing. She had also been forced to bathe outside with a garden hose and was often denied food as a punishment. Her adopted mother was charged with homicide by abuse and first-degree assault of a child. She was sentenced to nearly 37 years. Her husband was convicted of first-degree manslaughter and first-degree assault of a child and sentenced to nearly 28 years. And then there's 4-year-old Sean Paddock, who died from suffocation after being tied to his bed because he was repeatedly getting up. His adopted mother was found guilty of felony child abuse and first-degree murder. She is currently serving a life sentence. My point for bringing up these horrific events is to show just how dangerous the Pearls and people like them can be. And Bill Gothard made the Pearls' abusive form of punishment part of his teachings with the IBLP, but they didn't call it punishment. They called it encouragement.
Uh-uh.
And look, if you love Jesus, I love that for you. I love that Jesus potentially brings you some sort of comfort. But if you use Jesus as an excuse to hit a child or an animal with the intention of causing them pain, whether it's physical or psychological, then you're a piece of shit and you should look deeper into your control issues. And I have zero problems with having just said that. While we're on the topic of IBLP encouragement, I have to mention something that is referred to as blanket training. The idea is to start when the child is about 6 months old. You sit them on a blanket, you put something they want, like a toy or something, and you put it just out of their reach. And when the child reaches for the item, you hit them until they stop. Gothard said the purpose of blanket training is to, quote, break the rebellious spirit that children are born with. This is not training. This is abuse. And it is something that the Duggars proudly do in their own home. In one of her books, Michelle Duggar wrote, and this is a direct quote, "Throughout the day, when I knew I would have 5 minutes or more of uninterrupted time, I would focus on blanket training, calling out, 'Okay, boys, it's blanket time. Oh, isn't this fun? Come pick a toy so we can have blanket time.' Some days we might practice blanket time 3 or 4 times. Other times we only got it in once. But gradually it became a common practice. The boys learned to spread out their own blankets and then eagerly chose a toy to play with." And look, I know I wasn't there, but I feel I can confidently say, no, the children did not eagerly choose a toy for this activity, and they did not consider it playtime. It was abuse. You were physically hurting your child when they showed an interest in something. It's amazing that these children are not completely broken mentally.
Well, Josh
Who's to
Duggar.
say? Well, who's to say they aren't?
Yeah.
Again, get these children away from these people. I, mm. Now, before I get too far, I want to remind you, while Michael Pearl is a piece of shit who parents, who tells parents to physically and emotionally abuse their own children, his wife Debbie is also a piece of shit. Debbie wrote a book, which the title doesn't even make sense, and I didn't want to give her the time of day to look further into it to understand it. It's called "Created to Be His Helpmeet." Yep. Oh, again, terrible title. But the entire thing is to help women learn to appreciate the husband that God gave them as a gift. She also suggests that women should submit to their husbands, saying that women should not have equal rights. Then at one point, Debbie talks about a woman who came to Debbie for advice because the woman's husband was physically abusive and had threatened to kill her multiple times. What was Debbie's great advice? She said the woman should stop, quote, blabbing about his sins and win her abusive husband back by showing him more respect, because the aggressive outbursts are part of what it means to be a man.
Okay.
Yep. And this was the moment in the research when I truly believed I was being punked. This woman got up the courage to ask for help, and she was fed a bunch of bullshit. I hope that woman should, if she's real or not, who knows, I hope she was able to get safely out of her situation, and fuck Debbie Pearl for suggesting that a man is ever allowed to be aggressive. Debbie wrote, quote, "The wisest way to handle the aggressive husband is by not taking personal offense. Avoid provoking him." Then Michael Pearl adds his 2 cents because, it makes sense for him to say how he feels in a book written by his wife, because heaven forbid she does it herself. Michael very helpfully adds, and I quote, "You must commit yourself to the one who placed you under your husband's command. Your husband will answer to God, and you must answer to God for how you respond to your husband, even when he causes you to suffer. Just as we are to obey government in every ordinance, and servants are to obey their masters, even the ones who are abusive and surly." No one deserves to be abused in any way by their partner. No one gets a hall pass to treat others however they want. Michael also shared the story of their honeymoon in the book, and it's graphic and horrific because he is clearly describing sexual assault and how much he wants to dominate and control his new wife. It was a horror show to the point I stopped reading it and I just refused to quote it here. So we're moving on. But we're going to go back to the punishment and the IBLP uh, because at some point there's going to be children like, oh God, I don't know, Josh Duggar, who go beyond things and still don't do, no matter what you do, they still don't do what they're supposed to. So the IBLP had what they called training centers, and it's where they would send children who were seen as problematic. Josh Duggar was sent to one very briefly after he confessed to molesting his sisters. The point of the training centers was to keep children on the right path with the hope that someday the IBLP way of life would dominate the world. And honestly, if your main goal in life is world domination, it's time to look inwards. But of course, these training centers were full of physical, sexual, and psychological abuse. They would punish children by locking them in a prayer room, which was just an empty room with nothing but a Bible. Kids would get locked in there for hours, sometimes even days or weeks at a time. Again, I remind you, the person claiming that these abuses were acceptable ways to punish a child has never had a child himself. For the sake of the child, uh, it's for the best, and I'm glad Gothard never had children. But the closer you look at the bullshit that Gothard spouts, the more you question why anyone would follow him. An example of his bullshit. This is a Gothard quote. "The one who made pornography popular in America has done more damage in America than 100 Hitlers."
It's just silly. Like, it's
Yep.
silliness.
Mhm.
You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, it's like, come on.
For those like Bill Gothard who need a quick refresher, Hitler was responsible for the murders of approximately 6 million Jewish people during World War II. To suggest the popularity of porn is anywhere close to being the same as a fucking genocide, it's hell to me. And again, I just feel like I'm being punked. I, I, oh. But despite there being sexual abuse allegations within the IBLP, I'm sure there were more than just Josh. Um, they really, really like to focus on porn as though it was more harmful than the abusers themselves, because of course they blamed the porn for causing the abusers to be the way that they are. Um, at an IBLP seminar, Michelle Duggar warned of the dangers of romance novels. She said that they were evil and pornography. And to that I say, Michelle, you can pry my fairy smut from my cold dead hands. Shout out to goddess Sarah J. Maas. Um, lovely author. She's really taken me on a journey still. But another example of Gothard insanity, because this one really tickled me in a way. Bill Gothard told his followers that Xavier Roberts, who is the man credited with the creation of Cabbage Patch Kids, was a warlock and that he cursed every single doll with a demon. And to that, Bill, my Cabbage Patch Joanna would like to tell you to get over yourself. But even with Gothard's followers refusing to buy the dolls, Cabbage Patch Kids managed to sell out in most places. In November 1983, the high demands for Cabbage Patches caused riots in the stores. They were basically the Tickle Me Elmo dolls of the 80s. Xavier Roberts was, of course, not a warlock, to the best of my knowledge. However, he is not without scandal. In a move reminiscent of the creation of the board game Monopoly, Xavier didn't exactly create Cabbage Patch Kids on his own. For more on Monopoly, check out episode 136. But regarding Cabbage Patch Kids, in 1976, Xavier met an artist named Martha Nelson Thomas, who made dolls that she called doll babies. The thing about doll babies, you don't buy them, you adopt them. Which, gosh, that sounds so familiar. Like something Cabbage Patch taught me. Anyhow, Xavier approached Martha about selling the dolls, but she didn't like the idea of her dolls being mass produced. So she said no. Xavier then allegedly made a few very subtle changes to Martha's design, including adding his own signature to the doll's butt cheek, and then he released the dolls as his own in 1978. 4 years later, the dolls were mass produced through Coleco under the name Cabbage Patch Kids. Martha filed a lawsuit, which was settled out of court for an undisclosed amount in 1985. I don't know what she got, but Lord knows it wasn't nearly enough. Hashtag justice for Martha. And look, if is taking someone's product, making minimal changes, and putting it out as your own good, no. Especially when Xavier managed to turn Martha's homemade dolls into a billion-dollar industry. But because the bar is so unbelievably low in this episode, I'm giving Xavier props because from the best I can tell, he was never inappropriate with women or children.
Wow. Yeah. And
Yeah.
sometimes it doesn't feel like you should be giving out an award for having basic human decency, but when you're being surrounded by the scourge of humanity, it's nice to call it out and say, well, as far as we know, he didn't touch anyone inappropriately.
Correct. To be clear, I had just learned about this whole Xavier Roberts nonsense during this research, which is why I felt the need to bring it up because I want everyone to know. For being a half decent human being, good job, Xavier. For fucking over Martha, fuck you, Xavier.
Yeah.
Gross. Dirty. Dirty. Anyhow, again, the bar is just so low to be a half decent human in this episode. But why do I mention that Xavier didn't touch anyone inappropriately? Why would I bring that up? Oh, it's because Bill Gothard did do it. Before I get into the gross stuff about Bill, we're going to look briefly at his siblings. One of them was mentioned in the documentary, but I found a second one who's also shit. So,
Wonderful.
Bill Gothard was one of 6 children that included Anne, Laura, David, Joan, and Steve. From the best I can tell, the daughters in the family, I think were okay. All 3 boys, problematic. Honestly, I could probably do an entire episode about the brothers alone, but for the sake of time, we're just going to go with like a Cliff's Notes version.
Yep.
So we're going to start with David Gothard. He was born in 1938. The Florida State Attorney General alleged that since 2003, David and his companies engaged in illegal activities, including racketeering. Turns out David was selling shares of Activision stock, even though neither David nor Activision were registered with the SEC. It's also claimed that David used a Ponzi type scheme to steal millions of dollars from elderly people.
Mm.
In 2016, David was charged with securities fraud, scheme to defraud, and 4 counts of grand theft related to some shady business dealings. In 2018, he entered a guilty plea for securities fraud and grand theft and was sentenced to more than 2 years in prison, followed by 10 years probation and an order to pay $115,000 restitution, which doesn't come close to the millions that he actually stole. But David's no stranger to prison. He spent 2 years in a California prison in 1986 after he was caught illegally selling over $1 million in securities. I guess that initial stint in prison taught him nothing. Then there's another brother, Steve Gothard. Born in 1946, Steve worked with Bill at the IBLP as Bill's second in command. In 1980, at a staff meeting, Steve confessed to having sexual relations with 7 of the IBLP's secretaries over the course of a few years. I do not have official confirmation whether any or all of these were consensual or not. The women considered these relations to be outright abuse. Apparently, Steve was also known for having his assistant buy porn films for him, and then he would just use IBLP money to pay for them. In fact, Steve was known for using the IBLP bank account as his own personal piggy bank. He also used the corporate plane for personal use, as did his brother Bill. Between 1979 and 1980, members of the Gothard family used that plane 15 separate times, including for things like, family vacations. And then there was the time that Steve flew a bunch of staff members to Niagara Falls for lunch.
I can't.
And times when Steve would use the plane for his own private business ventures. Members of the IBLP staff said that both Bill and Steve exerted extraordinary psychological control over them. Bill was told Steve's alleged sexual indiscretions, or he was told about them back in 1976, but he did nothing about it. Then in July 1980, Bill told his followers that Steve and all the women involved were fired. Fair to the women? Not exactly. But again, it makes you wonder if the relations were consensual or not. All the women involved with Steve were described as young, single, and still under their father's umbrella of authority. According to Recovering Grace, which is a website that supports IBLP and Gothard victims, Steve Gothard put these women through sexual mistreatment, psychological bullying, spiritual manipulation, social blackmail, and abuse of authority. Bill handled the situation by simply transferring Steve from the Illinois campus to one in Michigan. One mother begged Bill not to send her daughter to the same campus as Steve, and so he just sent her anyway. And if that's not gross enough, whenever Bill felt that a young woman disobeyed him, Bill would send her to the Michigan campus to work with Steve. And nothing is grosser than saying, a woman did something I don't like, I'm going to send you to the campus with a known sex abuser. It's fucking gross. And you just know with a creep like Bill, it's likely whatever he felt they did wrong, it was actually nothing that they did wrong. Steve Gothard died in December 2019 at the age of 72. Weirdly enough, his obituary mentions his siblings and his great love of God, but it doesn't mention anything about the IBLP or his abuse scandals. It's so weird. Bill Gothard, the final one of these fucks that we have to talk about, that's where she's at. He was born in 1934. Just like his brother Steve, Bill also allegedly used IBLP money for personal use, including, buying antiques and building an expensive retreat. Bill was also known for forcing staff members to sell their homes and give the money to the IBLP so that they would put their trust in God and the ministry to provide them. In 1980, Bill was paying his staff about $14,000 a year, which is equivalent to about $52,000 in 2023. At the same time, Bill was giving his brother Steve and their father an annual salary of about $30,000, which is like $111,000 today. It's just funny that Bill's father got a salary when he didn't actually work for the company. Bill's personal secretary of 9 years wrote a 10-page long list of grievances with Bill, stating that he, quote, twisted scripture to achieve total control over her mind and emotions. She claimed that Bill told her how to dress, who she could spend time with. She claimed he would dictate letters to her that she had to send to her parents so they wouldn't know the truth about what was going on. Over the years, Bill was seen fondling and patting female employees, which Bill later described in a staff meeting as moral failures on his part. He was seen putting his hands on the knees of young girls, up their skirts. Employees claimed that Bill misappropriated company money, breached contracts, and even, quote, obtained sexual favors, resulting in physical and emotional damage to former employees. At one point, Bill was caught alone with a woman in his room, which I don't have to remind you goes against Bill's own teachings that a man and woman should never be alone unless they're married. Bill never did get married. He claimed he never found a woman worthy of a life commitment. as though he's some sort of prize. I am genuinely shocked that he didn't marry a woman just to cover all his absolutely shitty behavior. But when his staff started talking about Bill's indiscretions, he put a stop to it by creating what he called the Matthew 18 teaching, which made it sinful for people to gossip. Of course, that same teaching also made it impossible for women to report the abuse that they suffered, as no one was allowed to talk negatively about anyone else to other people. And if there was a problem, the only solution was, well, you have to talk to your offender or the abuser privately, as though that was going to solve anything. Another way the IBLP screwed over abuse victims was the law of crying out. This law stated that if a woman doesn't cry out to God while being sexually assaulted, oh, well, then she's as much to blame as her attacker. It's, again, the biggest bunch of bullshit I've ever heard. A third time. I just truly feel like I'm being punked because I cannot comprehend how this is real. The IBLP was not and is not a safe place for women. In 2014, more than 30 women from the IBLP made complaints about Bill, and 2 years later, 10 women filed a lawsuit against Bill Gothard, citing sexual abuse, sexual harassment, and cover-ups. Some of the victims claimed that Bill touched them inappropriately over their clothing and forced their hands on his own genitals. Some of the victims were minors at the time. Bill denied the allegations, claiming he had never in his life touched a girl immorally in any way, and he'd never even kissed a girl. Due to the growing allegations, Bill Gothard was removed from the IBLP. In 2018, he had to be physically removed from an IBLP event by the very paramilitary organization that he himself had created. At the time, the IBLP was worth about $90 million. And really, whoever took control of the money. So, of course, people were interested and eager to get Gothard out so that they could get themselves in. Jim Bob and Michelle Duggar took over control briefly, but as of this record, the current IBLP president of operations is a man named Tim Lewandowski, who was mentioned in a 2016 lawsuit as having slandered the women who spoke out about the sexual abuse they suffered at the hands of Bill Gothard. It's probably safe to say that there's not going to be anyone with a clean record who is willing to take over the IBLP because, as I stated moments ago, the IBLP is harmful to women and children. The sexual harassment case against Bill was dropped in 2018, after which Bill had the balls to countersue the victims, claiming that they made false and defamatory statements. That case was also dropped. Circling back to the reason that we're talking about the prick Bill Gothard in the first place, the Duggar family became such a fascination with audiences that it led to even more fundamentalist families getting their own reality shows. This included, but was not limited to, Bringing Up Bates, which is also known as United Bates of America, which is a family that have 19 children. Welcome Plathville is a family with 9 children, and the Willis family, which is a family with 12 kids. But the thing about the Willis family, their show got canceled in 2016 after a single season because the father, Toby Willis, was arrested on 4 counts of child rape stemming from a 2004 incident involving a girl under the age of 12. He pleaded guilty in July 2017 and was sentenced to 40 years in prison. I have read that Toby Willis was raised in the Institute of Basic Life Principles, IBLP. So maybe it's time to look a little closer at Bill Gothard and the so-called church that he built, because somehow, even after all this, the IBLP is still active. As of 2021, the Advanced Training Institute is being sold simply as a Bible study, as opposed to a homeschooling education. Multiple members of the Duggar family have released books detailing their experiences growing up as a Duggar. Ginger released Becoming Free Indeed in January 2023. In it, she talked about growing up in the public eye and how it caused her to have an eating disorder in her teen years and severe social anxiety that she still battles with to this day. Ginger also said that she left the IBLP after her sister Jessa encouraged Ginger to rethink her beliefs. Jill Duggar has a new book coming out, I believe, a week from this release date, called Counting the Cost. Honestly, I am proud of her for telling her own story. It cannot be easy to push back against the way you were raised. As of this record, Jessa, Ginger, and Jill have all left the IBLP. And for the sake of their children, I think it was the best move to make. Reporting for True Crime and Cocktails, this episode enraged me.
Well, listen, let's take one more break, get another drink, hit the can one more time, and we'll be back with my thoughts and us wrapping it up on this Duggars episode of True Crime and Cocktails. Final clap. Here we go on 3. 1, 2, 3. Welcome back to True Crime and Cocktails. We're, of course, discussing the Duggars. So many things to get through. The entire population of the world could fit into Jacksonville. That is going to haunt me as I sleep. It's just, I don't care what your beliefs are. To your point, believe what you want to believe. Follow whatever religion you want to follow. That is just not factually true.
Yep.
Now, my question is this, and you may not know the answer. When they said 17 kids and counting, for example, did that include Tyler, who wasn't a biological child?
I don't believe so, no.
I don't think it did, right? Yeah.
No.
Huh, gross too. The fact that Jill had signed that contract her father gave her when she was an adult but was listed as a minor, I just wrote in all caps, litigation, Jill.
He also had her sign it the day before her wedding, aka in their world, the last day he had authority over her.
Yep.
So that her authority wouldn't be her husband's.
But again,
but
yes,
still,
100%.
Like legally, yes,
but in a court of law,
adult.
Exactly. You're 18. You can't be signing a doc. Your parents shouldn't be having you sign a document as a minor. So my point is yeah, litigation. I encourage her and I hope she does. You said Jim Holt. All I could think was Steve Holt.
Steve Holt. Yeah, yep. I know.
What a joy. What a joy. Okay. So many things to get through here. The fact that they kept the girls in the house, knowing what had happened with Josh, the fact that they kept filming all of these details, the fact that they made Jill and Jessa do that interview, I think is, I'll say it to quote SVU, especially heinous. Like, I don't agree with any of the parents' choices at all, but I think that it just takes it to a new level when you are asking your daughters to go on television and specifically defend their brother who violated them. I wrote down, I want to say this in terms that they will understand. There is a special place in hell for those two. And I stand by that. The fact again, that not only were you accepting his behavior, but then making them have to relive that trauma in that way, I just think is so disgusting. I can't handle it. Now, I also remember there was something said too in the documentary about Josh being really good at computers, quote unquote.
Yes.
And the only reason I bring that up is because the fact, again, that it was described as in the top 5 of the worst that authorities had ever seen in terms of the child pornography. It was only like 2 things that he was charged with, right? Like it was like one thing he was charged with possessing of and one thing he was charged with distributing. I just only want to point out that I'm certain that there is more and that he probably just covered his tracks using his know-how.
There was a thing in the documentary that said the hard drive that they found this stuff on, he had like split it in a computery way.
Yeah.
Because the regular thing was on, there was some sort of software on the computer that was supposed to prevent them from ever viewing anything. But he like is so good at computers, he found a way around it. So he had this second section of hard drive that went around this software. And so yeah, there's got to be more. And I guarantee when he's out, he's not done.
No, it isn't something that people
been
typically
his
are,
life since he was
yeah.
12.
And it isn't something that typically people like. It takes a lot of want to rehabilitate yourself. And the problem is that often people that engage in that don't want to. Am I saying it's impossible? No. Am I saying again that it requires a lot of personal fortitude? Yes. Louis Theroux does a bunch of documentaries about people who have been charged with terrible sex crimes. And I do, from my own psychologist perspective, find it fascinating to hear these people's stories, and what their lives look like, et cetera. But, and it's on a spectrum, right? Like some people really do want to rehabilitate themselves and do better and all of the above. Some don't. And I don't know. I'm just saying we've seen a real pattern with him, and I don't know what that I would personally have a lot of faith that he's really committed to recovery,
Oh, he's not. And
Sorry.
his parents are not committed to helping him recover in
No.
any way.
Nope. Christy also said in the first break, and I wrote it down, isn't it interesting that after this Ashley Madison scandal, they named one of their children Madison?
There's other M names.
Josh and Anna, like that feels twisted.
Oh, yeah.
If they never thought about it, that's even creepier.
Yes.
Now listen, it's impossible not to call out, no, I'll say it. It's impossible for me not to call out the fact that the basic premise of this religion was to have as many children as possible, and that women had to obey their husbands, and the messaging that they wanted to go back to a better time. I've watched some documentaries about the rise of Donald Trump, and listen, however people vote is however people vote. But what I will say is that I just think it is impossible to ignore that there is so much happening in the United States currently that is being driven by a lot of religious beliefs. That's just a fact. Whether you agree with it or you don't, I think it's safe to say that's factual. And I think that as these families from these churches continue to grow up, and these children that are coming from families of 15, 20 children are becoming voting age, these are children that are being taught at home. And this is not a slight against homeschooling. There is plenty of parents who homeschool their children and follow curriculums and do a great job. We're talking about this specific curriculum that, yes, I'll say it, and you can come for me, isn't based in any sort of actual form of education, period.
No.
It is completely being developed to keep this generation of this army of children improperly educated,
yep,
believing these beliefs, that then it's no coincidence that the ideology of this church was, let's go back to a better time. And we watched a president run on something called Make America Great Again. It's the same concept.
Yeah.
I just think it's important to note, regardless of where you lie, that again, the point is that so much of what is happening right now, I personally believe, is because of the rise of these kinds of churches in America. Yep. And it's only going to continue.
Oh, 100%.
My opinion. Because again, it's not a proper education, period. And I don't feel there's nothing to come for, because again, there are ways that you can teach Bible study. You can teach religion to your children. But when you're teaching them things that are just patently false, that there's absolutely nothing to base these, I don't even want to use the word teachings, because it's not. The wisdom booklet saying your hands are formed of non-living atoms. It's just, I don't even know what you get from teaching kids that. Like, there's just nothing that, like, this isn't even a debate about whether evolution is real to me. But again, to your point, feels like you're hurting your own brain when you try and apply logic to that. Don't let boys change diapers, especially baby girls. Here's the thing. So they raised all of their children with these beliefs. So then, yes, what my question would be is, then why did what happened with Josh happen? And why is it that Bill Gothard was doing what he was doing? And why is it that his brother was doing what he was doing? Isn't it interesting that in a faith that is pushing all of these sex is evil and don't give any boy a chance to do anything bad, these things are still happening? Isn't that
Mhm.
interesting from, again, a psychological perspective? Almost feels like there's things that are happening in the way that they're teaching these different ideologies that is pushing people the other way into exactly what they're trying to deter against. Fascinating. Um, the Before the Wedding Night book is just, it makes me want to scream.
Yep.
The fact that it was filmed, even worse. Uh, and again, I just wrote down, listen, uh, they wanted to dominate the world. Well, they're just starting in America. You can come for
Yeah.
me all you want. This isn't about how people choose to vote. I'm talking about this specific cross section of people that I think, again, are are programming their children into pushing very dangerous beliefs. It's not about the religion. It's not about how people want to live their lives. It's about not. It's about, again. It's indoctrination. It is adjacent to cultism. I'm sorry, it
Yep.
just is. You're not providing. I also think that these children aren't being provided with the education to choose, because there's plenty of religious people who believe in God and follow, go to church and all of the above, where their children can be brought up that way and choose to what degree they want to be involved. Um, can go to schooling and choose to continue in their educations or not as they want to. These kids are not, in my opinion, are not being given choice. They're not being given, and it goes back to how they're being raised. The child abuse, that blanket training, honestly, of all the details, and all of them are horrific in this whole story, but that, for whatever reason, chilled me to my core the most. The fact that you're starting with babies and hitting babies when they're trying to physically reach for something they want, the metaphor, the lesson that that is teaching this entire generation of children, that they can't think for themselves, that they can't have the things that they want, that they need to be obedient and submissive and do whatever their parents want them to do. I am just saying, I feel like we are starting to see in the cultural climate, we're starting to see where that goes.
Yep.
And it's, again, I think it's just chilling to not give children the ability to choose. And I don't think that any of these kids were.
No.
When you're, again, from infancy, being physically and mentally abused into doing something, those kids are victims, and they're just a part of the larger, you know what I mean?
100%.
Um, yeah. And then it's also, and then the last thing, again, I love that I just can't let this go, but the last thing that I had said on that topic was, it's interesting that, Xavier Roberts, that whole story, that those dolls sold out in 1983 when they were being called um so evil, that he was a warlock and all of the above. And it
Yeah.
was like, oh, but they still sold out. And it was like, right. But what's interesting is that, though, that was before we're seeing all the fundamentalist kids growing up, right? Like, at that point, it was still just that first couple generations. Now we're starting to see, right? Now is when we're getting all of these different toys are being called satanic, and again, the swing we're seeing with people politically and the things that are passing politically. It's again, it's just, it chills me, and it chills me again because then it's also like this law of crying out, which just is so disgusting. And the ways that it's manifesting, the Hobby Lobby thing is a great example, where this is somebody who's taking their political, excuse me, religious beliefs and then implementing them in their workplace, and then politically being backed up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. These are the same people that he went viral recently. I don't know his name because I don't give a shit. Some preacher, because of the Barbie movie, brought a Barbie dream house on stage at one of his, let's call it what it is, shows, and he smashed it with a baseball bat that had a Bible attached to it. And somebody, I can't remember who it was, but a video that I saw about that made me laugh so hard because they were like, just to be clear, Barbie dream homes don't come assembled. So that guy sat for hours to build that thing to be able to tear it apart. And I was
That
like,
is a
that's
great point.
delicious to even think about.
Yeah.
But
And ooh, don't you bet he was angry. Ooh,
yeah,
every time he snapped one of those pieces into another following those instructions. Ooh, he got closer to God.
I just
Oh
want to
boy, did
know,
that make him closer to Jesus.
do you think he put the decals on? Was he like putting on the decal on like the little TV, or like, here's the curtain decals? Like, did he go full for it? I don't know. I didn't watch it enough. I just saw him smashing it and everybody just going insane. And it's like, because that movie is so woman forward and they are so not. For them to be like,
Right.
no, men should be in the power. And it's like, I can't with this.
Right. And I mean, again, yeah, I know it's so overwhelming. And I think again, it's it touches on, I think, so many people who maybe believe something politically that I don't, for example, right? Or that we don't. Like
Sure.
it elicits this kind of response where it's an us or them, and which side are you choosing, right? Which I think is one of the biggest issues personally in society in general, but certainly in the United States, is again that it's black or white, it's red or blue, it's one or the other, right? And I think that inherently that just loses humanity. When people are kind of being forced, like, hey, you got to choose one side on this, and you have to choose, and you have very strong beliefs one way or another. I think I just can see this world. And again, I think that this is a part of it. It's like people are getting on sides of things because they feel like they have to, like they feel like it betrays their faith or it betrays their beliefs, etc. And again, what it all comes back to for me is that I personally believe that you can be a person of deep faith, and that doesn't mean that you have to agree with the things that are currently happening and the things that we're talking about over the last couple of hours. You know what I'm saying? And I think that that's the most important thing is regardless of how you lie politically, regardless of how you lie on a religious kind of spectrum, I just feel like where it falls apart for me again is when we lose the humanity. And people are saying, like, well, I don't agree with X, Y, and Z, but it's kind of under the umbrella of what my quote unquote political beliefs are. So I guess I'm going along with it. That's the thing. And again, that connects directly back to what I'm saying, where this is a church that knows that and is going, well, then we need to start at infancy and train this generation of children, generations at this point of children, that their free will and their free thought and thinking for themselves is wrong, and they'll get beaten if they do it. And again, I just think we're seeing what the kind of fallout of churches like this is having in real time. And on one hand, how fascinating. On another hand, how terrifying.
Oh, 100%. They continue to say their whole goal is to raise generations who are going to, their wording, infiltrate politics and the media. That's their whole goal.
And we've already, yes, and they're succeeding.
They're
succeeding. Again, there's a whole documentary about, oh gosh, I'm blanking, but another church and its connection to Trump. And the fact that, again, Donald Trump was a Democrat. He was a liberal. He was for years. And when he decided to get into politics, he realized how he could win. And how he could win was aligning himself with different, very, very powerful religious groups. And this is not me slandering religion. I can't make that clear enough. It's not that. I'm saying that there are different organizations like we're talking about, like this one, like specific ones that have an agenda. And that's not just about going to church and reading the Bible and being good people, which are all things that I can support. What I can't support, again, is these, domination, abuse, All of those kinds of things, obviously.
Yep.
What a truly enraging and fascinating again, but upsetting episode.
Look, I knew who the Duggars were. I knew the kind of idea that this was. I knew shit about Josh. I knew there was going to be probably physical abuse involved in this somehow, and that was all I knew. I did not know about this specific church, or about the fucking creep who created it. And it's just so depressing and horrifying to think about.
Yeah. And I think the big thing too, and I think we've said this in past episodes in different ways, is like I can respect someone else who has differing beliefs from me. I can't respect someone else whose beliefs are we should be abusing our children, we should be controlling women. That's where it breaks down for me. And I think that that's something that I think people on any side of any political or religious spectrum should be able to come together on. That's my hope for the future. Can we come together about the abuse? Can we all just agree that that's not okay? And that it makes everybody look bad, like on
Oh, yeah.
that side. Like, come on.
Oh, it's the fact that nobody is coming to the defense of children in any of this. All like no one's saying a thing, and by no one I mean anybody who is so hard faithful into that church. Um, they won't say it's abuse, but if you go to hand them a Cabbage Patch doll, get that demon out of my home. That's not safe for my child. And look, yeah, if you're, I don't know. I mean, this isn't a personal story. Obviously, this is like someone I knew, like a friend of a friend, like laying on their back as a child, holding their Cabbage Patch doll up ahead, and then the doll falls forward and cracks them in the face. It might hurt because while their bodies are soft, their faces are rock hard and not meant to be handled by children, and it might hurt them. Um, that's the only hurt they're gonna get from having a doll. And the bullshit people of destroying Barbie houses or burning Barbies or all of that because they're show because these are things that show children that there's better ways than what they've been raised. Women can have power, women have rights, women can do anything men can do, and them some. But the point is, them learning that, well, that's not helpful. They need the women on their side, or the women aren't going to keep cranking out the babies to make them an even larger community than they
Yeah.
already are. But I also heard that at one point, I don't know what pissed them off, but at one point, the Duggars ended up taking everything Disney out of their home and having a bonfire.
Interesting.
Like, and just burning all of it. And it's like I mean, God, there's that teacher in Florida who showed her students one of the new Disney movies, and she got fired because parents freaked out because it had one of the characters in that movie's gay. And it's like, I just can't.
Yeah.
And I understand that they have grown up with this kind of thing and these ideas their whole life, so it's going to be hard for them to see through the other way. But to me, it's that they can't see that children and women are being harmed so badly in this. Oh God, I
Yeah.
can't. And all of them that are like, oh well, a woman has to submit to a man. I'm like, there we go.
Yeah.
I can't.
No.
I can't. I wish that someone could open their eyes.
Yeah, and to anyone listening who maybe believes that, who was raised that way, who believes that you don't. That's the thing.
Correct.
That's
Yeah.
that's just a truth. You don't have to. Even if it
Correct.
feels like you do, you don't have to.
No.
And that can make people as angry as they want, but that is a fact. You can choose to live a life where you don't have to do that.
Yeah. And the punishments, I mean, call them what they are. They aren't encouragement. It's punishment. It's abuse.
It's abuse.
Like,
Straight
no one
up.
has a right to lay a hand or anything on anybody else.
Nope.
I was not anticipating any of this. It's my
I know.
point.
I know. It really gets away from you. This case really gets away from you. But listen,
Uh,
fantastic job. You killed it as always. So informative. Hit all the points. I mean, truly, as always, fantastic work. We appreciate it.
you are too kind. I'm super happy it's over.
I get it. I get it. And we thank
Uh,
you, dear listeners, for coming with us on this wild journey. If you haven't already, give us a follow on the socials on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at True Crime and Cocktails, on Twitter at Not Detectives. Of course, if you'd like a little extra content, some bonus episodes, go over to patreon.com/, True Crime and Cocktails. You can learn more about our subscription-based service over there. And the only place for official True Crime and Cocktails merch is, of course, truecrewmerch.com. So check that out as well if you're interested. Christy, do you want to tell the people about next week's episode?
on the next True Crime and Cocktails, Barry and Honey Sherman.
This is another one of our absolute most requested episodes. We got there. We're doing it.
And it's
Cannot wait.
Canadian.
And it's Canadian. Exactly. I cannot wait to hear all about it. Christy, do you want to say goodnight to the people?
As much as it hurts my heart. Good night, Bob Barker.
Oh, sure. And I'd like to say goodnight, Mike Hard.